Geometry gives us all our shapes, you see. Well, can't you see? Circles, squares, prisms, spheres, shapes that look like rabbits' ears, shapes of grapes and apes and apes, hiding out behind the drapes, time to make a great escape, when shapes are forming into apes. Geometry, geometry, geometry.
Well, hello geometry students. Welcome to our first lesson in geometry. This is chapter 1 from the Big Ideas Math curriculum. And what you see here is the 6 sections that's in chapter 1, what we're going to be going through. We're going to be starting today with 1.1, the points, lines, and planes. I did a little quick, funny video. I might give you some more installments of that video in the later lessons. I don't know if you caught it or not, but when it said geometry, it said this here, geometry, which is kind of funny, because if you just say that, it doesn't seem like it says geometry, but it says geometry. So that's kind of a funny little thing there. You can remember that. Maybe go home, tell your mom and dad about that. Geometry. All right. Well, in 1.1, we're looking at these points, lines, and planes, and this is what we're learning. So you're going to see this as the front page on each lesson. So what we're going to be learning here is we're going to be naming the points, lines, and planes. We're going to be naming segments and rays. We're going to be doing a little bit of a sketch of some intersections of lines and planes. That'll be the more challenging part there, I think, to sketch them. And then we're going to solve some real-life problems involving lines and planes. Not too much, not too hard there. But the main section is just understanding points, lines, planes, segments, rays, and all of this. All right, before we get into that, I have a little quick cartoon of our day. So here's our quick cartoon. It is a Far Side cartoon. And it says here, while vacationing in Africa, Pinocchio has his long-time wish to be a real boy suddenly and unexpectedly granted. So as he's in Africa, poof, he becomes a real boy right in the middle of all the lions, I guess, right there. So now he's a real boy. I guess, funny part there is he could now be killed because he's real. Okay, so before we actually get into the lesson, we have a maintaining mathematical proficiency there on page 1 of your notes. And I want you to do this page first. This is 12 problems, just a quick little thing there you can do. Go ahead and pause the video at this point and do these 12 problems. And you're going to see on page 1 in the textbook some examples for this. So it says see page 1 in the book, 4 examples. So go ahead and look at your textbook there. You can pull that out and look at page 1. You'll see some examples for the top section and also for the bottom section where it says find the area of the triangle. You want to use the area formula for that, which is 1/2 base times height to find the area of these triangles. Go ahead and pause the video, complete these, and then go ahead and play it, and I'll show you the answers. Okay, so hopefully you completed 1 through 12 here on the maintaining mathematical proficiency. I'm going to show you the answers to these 12 problems so you can check to see if you just got these correct. So here's the answers. So here's goes back and forth here. So 1 was 4, 2 is 1, and you can just go ahead and check your answers throughout here up to a 9 on these absolute value ones here, and then 10, 11, 12. These are in square centimeters, square feet, and kilometers squared as well. So those are your 3 answers there from 10, 11, 12. So go ahead, you can go ahead and pause the video and then just check to make sure you got those correct for these maintaining mathematical proficiency problems. Okay, so you should have been able to check all these answers. Let's move on to our lesson for 1.1. So as we do that, we're going to jump into some vocabulary. So on page 4 of your notes, we're going to skip over the explorations. Sometimes we will do those in class, and sometimes I'll just skip them altogether. So as far as the notes go, we usually start with the vocabulary page, and that's on page 4 of your notes. So go to there. And we're going to look at the first one here. Now, I'm only going to have you write down the vocabulary that's not already written in the core concept. So you also see on page 5 this core concept, and you can see the vocabulary for point, line, and plane are already written down for you. You just want to highlight these. So I would highlight point, line, plane, just like they're highlighted here, so you know those are vocabulary words. You need to know those. You need to know what the definition of those is. So eventually you will be tested on definitions. So you need to know the definitions of these three, the point, line, and plane is, but also up here there's undefined terms. That's on your vocabulary, so you want to write down what undefined terms is. As in geometry, the words point, line, and plane are undefined terms. So that's what they are. So these are your undefined terms here. So you can just say these are the undefined terms. The point, line, and plane are the undefined terms. These words do not have formal definitions, but there is an agreement about what they mean. And so on here with the core concept, you can see a little also visual of it. A point is just like, there it is, a point, a dot. So point A, it could be represented by a dot, and we always are going to label it with some kind of a letter. So this is point A. So that's how we would say that. We're going to label this dot right here with an A, and we're going to call it point A. A line would be something that's, we've seen these before. We graphed them a little earlier already. But basically a line is a straight line, and it's going to have arrows on both ends. So a line is always going to be, going in, it's a one dimension, okay? So it is one dimension, just a straight line, represented by a line with two arrowheads. So that's very important right there, that it has the two arrows there on each end. Because if it doesn't have an arrow, if it just only has one arrow, that would be something different. Or if it doesn't have arrows at all, that's also, again, something different, which we're going to see a little later. So a line is going to have arrows on each end. We're going to name the line either a couple ways. We can name it with just a letter like L right here and call it line L. Or we can put a couple points on there, and it can be called now line AB. And it could be represented by this right here, this little AB with a little line above AB. Or we could also go BA. This could go forwards or backwards. It doesn't matter. You could also call this line BA. A plane, this one has two dimensions. So the point is no dimension. There's no dimension, just a dot. The line is one dimension, and the plane has two dimensions. Okay, and represented by a shape that looks like a floor or a wall, or even just your desktop. But it extends without end. So we need to realize that the line's very clear that the arrows will keep on going each direction. The plane also needs to know that you're going to be able to extend this plane out. There's four corners of the plane here are going to be extend out basically infinitely. It extends without end. So those it says through any 3 points. Now that's key. You want to maybe highlight that part right there. Through any 3 points that are not on the same line, okay, there is exactly one plane. So how do we name a plane? Well, a plane can be named by just a letter, like the letter over here is M. So we can name it just plane M, like that, if it's got this letter. But you can also name it with 3 points, and the points cannot line up. So if there were 3 points that were lined up, then you can't name it with those 3. They have to be points that are not on the same line. And it says you can use these 3 points that are not all on the same line to name the plane. So you got A, B, and C, that these do not line up. And so you can name it plane A, B, C. And you just need 3 points. You cannot name a plane with only 2. You have to have it 3 points there to name a plane if you're using points. Or you can actually just give it a name with a letter like this right here with the M. All right, let's move on to our next section. So just there, continuing on the vocabulary in page 4, we have 2 more vocabulary words. We have collinear points and coplanar points. So here, for these 2 definitions, you want to write this down next to the vocabulary. Collinear points are points that lie on the same line. So they all line up. So you can have like 3 points that are all lined up. Those would be collinear points. Coplanar points are points that lie on the same plane. So when we were just looking at that last plane, the ABC, those would be coplanar points, but they would not be collinear. So just looking at these here on your core concept, ABC are coplanar points. They're on the same plane, but they're not collinear. They do not line up. And so make sure you write those definitions down there on page 4 and under the definitions or next to the words coplanar and collinear points. Here's a little quick example. Let's just go watch this example. It says, it gives you this diagram over here. It says give 2 other names for line PQ and plane R. So we have look at line PQ. So P is here, Q is here. We want, two other names for this. Well, one of the names, you could name it just with the letter N, because this line here is also line N. So it could be line N, there's one name. Or you could go the other way. Remember, you can go backwards, forwards or backwards with the points here, because it's a line. Lines work both ways because there's arrows on both ends. So you could say PQ, you could also say line QP. So there's another way you could do that one. And as far as plane R, so this is plane R, you could pick three, basically, non-collinear points that do not line up. So there's several different ways you could do that. You could say V, S, and P, V, S, T, different points here that do not line up. So there's a couple planes down here, S, V, T, P, T, V. Those are just three letters you can use that are not lined up. What you could not use is you could not say SPT or TPS. You could not use those 3 points because those are lined up. Another one says here for B, name 3 points that are collinear. Okay, so that would be your S, P, and T points right there. So that's what that would be. Name 4 points that are coplanar. So that would be your V, your S, your P, and your T. Those are points that are coplanar because they're all on the same plane. Q is not on the plane with these other points here. So this line is kind of going up through this plane. So the plane might be a piece of paper, and this is like a line that's going through the middle of that paper or something. So you can see, you got SPT, and then the SPT and V are the ones that are coplanar. All right, let's move on to our next. Okay, so on page 6, we see our extra practice. So since we just went over that little, example, I'm going to give you a chance to try these now. It says basically the same thing. Give 2 other names for line CD for number 1. Give another name for plane M on problem 2. Number 3, it says name 3 points that are collinear. And then name a 4th point that is not collinear with these 3 points. And then number 4, name a point that is not coplanar with points A, C, and E. So go ahead and pause the video and answer 1 through 4. And once you're finished with 1 through 4 and have some answers there for those, then go ahead and play it again and I'll show you those answers. Okay, so hopefully you've got answers now for 1 through 4. And you're ready to just go over these. So let's take a look at number 1. It says 2 other names for the line CD. So C here is in the middle, and then D is up here. So you could name it this way. You could name it go in the other direction, right? We can go CD. We could also go backwards and do DC. So line DC would work. And also line M, because it has that name up next to the arrow. This is named as line M. So those are the 2 ways you could do that. Number 2, give another name for plane M. So this plane is labeled plane M, but we can also pick 3 points. We could not pick A, C, and B because those are all lined up. You have to use basically 2 of these with E. And it doesn't matter any 2 of these would work. You can go A, C, and E. You can go A, B, and E, C, B, and E. Any of those would work. So basically, here's a sample answer. A, B, and E is what they're showing here. But you could have used any of these 2 with the E, and that would have worked. So you could have put a different thing down here instead of A, B, E. You could have done A, C, E, and that would have been fine. Number 3, name 3 points that are collinear. So that would be these ones that are right straight here. So A, C, and B. So that would be that one. Name a 4th point that is not collinear with these 3 points. Well, that would be E. E is not collinear with A, C, and B. So there it is. A, C, B are the ones that are collinear, and E is not collinear. Now you could have also chosen D. So you could have said D is also not collinear with those 3 as well. So that would have worked. That's why it says sample answer here. So there was more than one answer on that one for that problem. Now number 4, name a point that is not coplanar with A, C, and E. So A, C, and E. Well, B is coplanar, so you wouldn't use B. D is the one that is not coplanar with A, C, and E. So that's definitely going to be D on this one. That's the only answer you could have chosen for number 4. All right, so let's move on to our next section. So we're back at the vocabulary, and on page 4, it says now defined terms. We talked about undefined terms, point, line, plane. Well, now we have defined terms. And here are the defined terms, the segment and the ray, opposite rays. So basically in geometry, terms that can be described using known words, such as point or line, are called defined terms. So now that we have these words, point, line, and plane, and we're using those words, well, now we can say these other ones are defined based on those words. So basically defined terms, segment and ray. So it gives you an example. There's a line again. Remember, the arrows are on each end with a line. A segment, however, has no arrows. So it has endpoints. That's what a segment is. And you want to highlight, it could be called line segment or just segment. So it might say it as line segment, or it might just say segment. Either one's the same thing. Either one is fine. Endpoints, there is a point on the end of your line segment or segment. So A and B are the endpoints to this segment. So you want to make sure you highlight those in your core concept and look and see this is what a line segment looks like as we are describing it or writing it out. If we want to write a line, we write it with arrows, but for a segment, we just don't include arrows. So this would be segment AB. You could also say BA, right? That's what it would be called. So segment AB, or line segment AB, can be written as just this with a little line right above it. No arrows. If it has arrows, then it would be a line, not a segment. Ray, you want to highlight the word ray because that's going to be a definition you're going to want to know as well. That one has one endpoint and then one arrow. So ray has one arrow on it, and it has one endpoint, and it has to always be read starting from the endpoint going in the direction of the arrow. So this one will be read as ray AB. And you can see here it says ray AB with just the arrow, and the arrow there is at the B because that's where it goes. That's the direction of it. You cannot name this one. For this one, you cannot name ray BA. In order to name it as ray BA, the endpoint would have to be at the B like it is here. So this is actually ray BA. The direction of the arrow shows you how to read it. So make sure you're recognizing that. Opposite rays, you can highlight the word opposite rays on this one here. Our rays are just going in the opposite direction. So you can see C is kind of in between A and B. So C could be your endpoint, and you could have a ray going this direction with ray CA, and you can have a ray going in the other direction of ray CB. So you can have opposite rays there in that sense. All right, let's go ahead and try some more problems. Okay, so here's where we talk about sketching intersections. So an intersection is where something is coming together, meeting up. So if you have two lines that are going to come together, they're going to intersect at a single point. So here's a diagram of that. That's an intersection of a single point. If you have two planes that are going to come together, like this figure here, they're going to intersect at a line. The line will be the intersection. So here on the vocabulary, again, next to the word intersection of vocabulary, write down the intersection of the figures is the set of points the figures have in common. So these two figures is a line. The figures are two lines, and they both have one common point. But these two figures are two planes, and they have a whole set of points that are lined up on this line here. That's the intersection. Now, it's not hard to draw two lines in an intersection here. The harder part's going to be probably drawing the two planes. So as we get to one of these, just go ahead and refer back to this. You might want to just refer back to this little diagram here. I might come back to it myself as we start to draw out what the intersection of the two planes is. Okay, so here's another example before we get into doing some more extra practice problems. It says give another name for segment GH. Now we would call this segment because, again, there's no arrows on this one. It's just a line across, no arrows. So GH would be here. So another name for it on this one, you can go opposite direction. You could say HG on this one. So this one can be HG, just like a line, a segment can go opposite. B says name all the rays with the endpoint J. So J, if that's your endpoint, you could say ray JE, ray JG, ray JF, ray JH. You got to start with the endpoint if the endpoint's J. Which of these rays are opposite rays? You can see, well, JE and JF are opposite. JG and JH are opposite on that one. So that's what this is all explaining down in here as far as naming all the rays and naming your opposite rays right here. Okay, so back to page 6 on your extra practice. Let's give you a chance to do 5 through 8. So just like we were just looking at in that example, here's another couple about just lines. These are lines here. It's got the arrows on the end. So just what's another name for each of these lines for 5 and 6. Number 7, just name all the rays that have an endpoint of T. That's the one there in the middle, and which of those is the opposite rays. So like I was just showing you. 8's where it's going to be a little more of a challenge. It says draw a plane M and N that intersect at line K, and you may want to wait on that one. So just at least do 5 through 7 right now, and you can check those answers, and we can come together and do 8 together. So go ahead and pause the video and do 5 through 7. Okay, so hopefully you've got the 5 through 7 completed, and just what is another name for line PQ? So PQ is here. Well, on a line you can go the opposite direction. You can say it's QP as well, so we can say that. You could have also named it as line J because it has a name up here next to the arrow. What's another name for RS? You can go opposite again and say SR, or you could have also named it as K as well. So RS has also a name at the very tip of the arrow as K, so it could have been named that as well. So either one of those has worked. Name all the rays with endpoint T. So that's a whole bunch of them here. So you got a TR, a TP, TS, and TQ. All of those are your rays that have an endpoint of T. And it says, okay, which ones are opposite rays? So TQ, I should say TP and TQ. These ones right here. So TP and TQ, those ones are opposite. TR and TS right here, those are also opposite. Now for number 8, this is the one where it's more of a challenge. We want to draw planes on. So using this diagram, on this diagram, we're going to draw a plane, 2 planes in fact. And we're going to label one as M and label the other one as N. And they need to intersect at line K, this line right here. So what might be good is if you drew kind of maybe a plane. It's going to be got 4 corners to it. And I might want to just go ahead and draw it right across the top here, right across the bottom. So you can kind of do that. Just go right across the top, hit these arrows, and we can come down and go across this way. Hit these arrows as well. I made that one pretty far over here. That's okay though. So there's one plane. We can name that as M. So you can just name it M. There's one plane in this diagram. We need to draw another plane. I'm going to use a different color. You might need to use just a dashed line or something like that, or as you go through. But basically, we don't need to hit both arrows. What we do need to hit is the arrow for line K here, because it says it needs to intersect at line K. So this one needs to intersect here. So you can kind of come, draw a line maybe down this way, and maybe then we go this way. And it's got to hit the line right here for, oops, not that one. It needs to hit this arrow. So I went a little too far with my line. Just probably shorten that up there a little bit. There we go. So I can come across now here and hit this arrow there. And then I can put those together. So there we go. So there's 2 planes. We can label this plane as N. That's our N plane. And there's 2 planes, and they intersect at this line right here at K. So that's our intersection line for these 2 planes. So one plane is going one way, the other plane is going another way. Here's another drawing for it. Definitely a better drawing. They have their lines a little bit different, though. I think their J line here is not extended as far, so that's why it looks a little bit different, probably. But that's basically what you want to try to get on your page there for number 8. All right, so we're going to pause real quick. Let's do a little quick joke of the day. So how do baseball or softball players keep in touch? How do they keep in touch? Well, they touch base every once in a while. They touch base. Yeah, that's funny. Okay, so here's another example. We're going to do some more sketching here. It says ABC, and you can just watch these, and we're going to do our next two, where we're going to sketch a couple. Just sketch a plane and a line that is in the plane. So we want to sketch a plane and a line in the plane. So you have plane M, and you just draw a line on top of that plane. You can label it L. So there's a plane and a line in that plane. And B says sketch a plane and a line that does not intersect the plane. So again, you can have the plane M again, but this time the L is going to have to be kind of up above, where it would be kind of parallel to the plane where it's never going to intersect. So here it couldn't be diagonal down this way, showing that eventually it would cross through the plane. It needs to be like a plane, like a magic carpet, and then some jet airliner up here that's never going to cross its path. So they're going parallel to each other. So that's why it never intersects. And then this letter C, sketch a plane and a line that intersects the plane at a point. So this one's definitely going to be plane M again, but now the line's going to go straight through the plane at some point. So this one's got the plane going this way and that line going straight through, and there it would intersect right at one point, right there at that point where my hand is, and that would be the intersection. Okay, let's go ahead and try 9 and 10. So in here it says sketch the figure described. It says 9 says segment AB and ray BC. So point B is the same point, like the same end point. So you're going to sketch it. So you can first sketch a segment. You can first draw just a line and end points on each one, A and B. And then from B, draw a ray and have a C in there somewhere. So it's going to be some kind of an angle at some point. It could be this way, it could be this back this way. It doesn't matter which way you have it. So you're going to have a line with endpoints, A and B. And then from B, you're going to draw a line with an arrow on it for the ray, and then somewhere in between the arrow and that B point, put a C point on there. So it should look something like this. Here's one example. There's your AB, and then going through from B, they got the ray going this way, they put a point there. And then number 10, line K. We want to sketch line K in plane M. So basically you're going to sketch what we saw back here right there. It's basically the same thing, except instead of L, they're saying, label it K. So basically this is what you're sketching here. Go ahead and sketch that for number 10. And it should end up looking something like this. So plane M, and the K could be any which way in this plane. So just put a little line there with arrows on each end, right? So the arrow's got to be, because it says line K, it's not a segment, and you're just labeling it K next to one of the arrows. All right, so we're almost done. I do have one more thing I want you to put on page 4, which is back on those vocabulary pages. It's this problem here. So once you finish sketching these here, you can pause it and finish your sketching of these, and then move on. There's just one last thing, and let's go to it right now. It's this molecule. So this is a molecule. It says it's a molecule of sulfur hexafluoride, like a chemistry molecule. But basically what it gives us is a whole bunch of different lines on here, a bunch of different points, a bunch of different intersections. And it's talking about, it says name 2 different planes that contain line R. So here's line R over here. It's going this way. It's going from point F and point D. So you can name it also DF, line DF. But this is our line we're looking at. It says name 2 different planes that contain that line. So that line is contained, you can think of, you need basically 3 points to make a plane. So you can use F as 1 point. B is also on this line, and so you could use B, and you could use E. I mean, you can't just use B, D, and you can't use these 3 because they're all lined up, right? A plane has to be 3 points that do not line up. So you could want to use F and B, and also like E over here, or you could use F and B and A. So there's different ones you could use, F and B and G. Those would be different planes that you can make from this. Now some of these might be the same plane, so they might create the same plane, but here's an example of what it's saying here. It gives you a couple options there. The question has two different planes you need to check. So let's see, what do we got? Yeah, so right here, D and F are on R, so E does not lie on line R, so you can use E. So that's why it said D, E, and F. So we could use those three to use. You can use another one. C, D, and F is also another one. So as we come over to doing one on our own, let's do one on our own here. So this is what I want you to do on page 4. I want you to answer 8, 9, and 10. Here's your molecule, and here's all your different ones. First it says name 2 different planes that contain line S. So you're looking for line S. That's this one. That's these 3 points line up with line S, so you can't use those 3 points. You can use 3 different ones though. So you can use, and it just says name 2 different planes. So it has to be different. So you have 2 different planes that you can use. Name 3 different planes that contain point K. So if you're looking at point K, you need it says name 3 different planes that would contain point K here. So you have one plane that's like flat in front, you have another plane that maybe goes flat across the middle, and maybe another one that's going like a little bit of an angle perhaps. So there's different planes. You need to kind of see this a little bit differently. So if you can think about, look at these lines right here. This straight one here, line S, and this kind of ray here, that makes a flat line going this way. So there's one plane that can go across this way in front. Then you can say, well, these ones right here, so if you look at this plane right here, that's kind of going flat across the middle, kind of laying flat. This is kind of in front of you where you see it right in front. But this one's going to lay flat across here. There's another one you could probably get going this direction here, going across, going this way with using these points here. So there's a few different planes you can get. And then down here, number 10, name 2 different planes that contain ray HJ. So I'll give you a minute to go ahead and pause the video, try to do 8, 9, and 10. If you can, try to draw this diagram out because it would be helpful to have that diagram in your notes. And then you can write these down for 8, 9, and 10. They're on page 4. You should have some space still on page 4. So go ahead and pause the video and do these 3, and I'll show you the answers, and then we'll be finished. Okay, so hopefully you did try these 8, 9, 10, and you're now checking the answers. So 2 different planes that contain S. This one has a sample answer, so GHL would work. So G, H, and L, that's one plane going this direction. Okay, those 3 points, that would work. G, H, and K would also work. G, H, and K this way would also work. You could have also done one that's G, H, and J. That would have been another one that could have worked as well. You could have used I, H, and J. That's the same one. So there's different ones you can use. This was just a couple sample answers here. 9 says name 3 different planes that contain the point K. So here's again sample answers. So you could say G, H, and K. That was this one over here. You could have also called it, plane K, H, G. Could have gone that way as well. Got KHL. So if you start with K, H, and L, there's another plane going across this way that you can kind of see go maybe flat. J, H, and K. So J, H, and K going this way. There's another one going that way. So you had to use point K. So you had to use this one and then 2 other basically non-collinear points that don't line up. That would create different planes. Number 10, name 2 different planes that contain ray HJ. So now you're looking at ray HJ. This ray right here, ray HJ, you got to use those 2. So 2 different ones. You can use G with H and J. So you can go up this way. There's a plane going this way, flat right this here. J, H, and K. You could have used the K over here. Another one going this way. So you're going to have here, here, like that kind of a plane going that way. So different ways you can kind of see this. You could have also gone this direction as well, probably this way here. You could have called it there. You could have came down here. You could have given a name of this one. This one should have been the same, though, as using G. So if you used I, that would be the same as using G. So you wouldn't want these two with G and an I. All right, so that concludes our lesson here, our first lesson, 1.1. Now you're ready to go on to the assignments. You want to do the assignment on thebigIdeasMath.com, and I'll see you back in class and on the next lesson.